Yo, Grim here. So I have Mannadium or Mannadium. It's one of the two. Um, Usually I've got a lot of like random, not actually tier decks, but this is actually one of my better decks. Yeah, I'm just gonna do a profile on this. It's pretty standard, honestly. Like most builds are pretty much the same for Mannadium. But yeah, can kind of get into it. It's a really cool synchro deck. Plays through a lot of hand traps, and overall is just a very powerful deck. Draw and Lockbird is the biggest issue for this deck. You can play a variant that plays around draw, but otherwise most of the hand traps you can play through if your hand's like decent. So I run triple Room Heart. It's just standard. I think you have to run 3 of him. He's your searcher. He tags out. The fact he can dodge stuff as well for some of your monsters is really crazy in my head. So it's triple Room Heart and then triple Meek. So for Mannadium monsters, that's all I run in the main deck is those 6. I don't use the other tuners. I don't think you need them. Maybe beforehand, but since they've had like newer stuff come out, it's not as important to run the tuners. You just clog your deck up. Meek is the superior tuner, and it's really the only one you need. I don't use Calamity Skip. The problem with the Calamity Skip sort of combo is it requires more resources for a board, and Calamity can miss time as well, which is something people have to keep in mind. Like, all it takes is for someone to draw off turn and go draw phase in Permanent Crimson Dragon, and the Calamity Lock's no longer as viable. It depends what your end board is. You could still get like a Disparter out instead, but like your Crimson Dragon pretty much has to be Chainlink 1, and it has to resolve for Calamity not to miss time. So yeah, I prefer not to use it. I don't think it's as relevant. This deck doesn't need to skip a turn. If they still play through your board, you usually win in that second turn because the deck has so much ability to OTK and just play through stuff. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, triple Meek, you don't need the other ones, in my opinion. And then I run for the Visa monsters, 2 Starfrost and 2 Samsara. So Samsara is the only one I'm actually considering bumping up to 3. Starfrost can stay at 2. I think it's a really nice number. You don't need 3. 1's too less. 2's a solid number for Starfrost. You kind of need the actual name of him. His effect is something from hand. He's level 6 tuner. Everything about him is quite handy. Samsara is really good. The fact he can summon himself from hand by shuffling your Visa stuff back in is really nice. He can be used as a non-tuner as well if you want him to. He's level 4, so you can normal him. He counts as Visa Starfrost in the field and the grave. So you can link one into him into Lightheart. That's the really main thing in my head. Is you normal him, link into Lightheart. It's crazy. The only thing with Samsara to keep in mind is that he if Clarium's on board, he's no longer 1521 monster. He'll be like 1621 if it's just him on field, or if you have like a Meek and Grave as well. So Clarium does sometimes mess up that sort of attack defense stat, but apart from that, that's the ratios I'm using at the moment. It's been performing well like this. It's just there might be a card I want to switch out for Samsara. And then I run a Cash Terrier engine with Scareclaw Cash. Fenrir is just a good card. Honestly, it's not really more to say about him. He's just a really good card. He's an interrupt. The fact he searches a Scareclaw as well is really nice. Scareclaw Cash can help you play through quite a bit. So yeah, that's really handy. And then of course I run the 2 right chart. Don't need any other Scareclaw monsters. Don't need him at 3. 2's a really nice solid number for him. yeah, Scarecrow engine's kind of needed in this. And then I run triple Ash Blossom. I run 6 hand traps, and then I run just generically powerful cards. In my head, I was thinking either I run loads of hand traps in this, or I run more like, like 6 hand traps and then 6, 7, or 8 board breaker sort of cards, or just strong cards. So I opted to kind of just split them in two, and I chose triple Ash, triple Imperm, and I don't think I'd change it. They're really good. Sometimes I'll side them out for draws or stuff if it really hurts my opponent. But that's for monsters, and then I run triple Calarium. You need 3 of this. It's their main card. I don't really need to say more on it. It's amazing. 2 right Phobia. The Scarecrow package honestly is mostly 2 ofs. It's like 2/2, and then Scarecrow Cash 2 is a 1 of. You don't really need more of 2 ofs. It's just like a engine for the deck. But you can't have 1 ofs. You do find you need those 2 ofs. They are very helpful. So yeah, 2 of this. Its effectiveness 3 defense monsters on the field is really handy to remember. So pops a monster on the field, they're 3 defense monsters. Pops a card, sorry, even better. But again, if you're only really playing Mannadium and you don't know Scarecrow, that's kind of something you will only know if you like play Scarecrow, or if you just read your cards. But Yu-Gi-Oh players, we don't really read cards as often as we should. But that is really handy. Same for Rykart. Sometimes you can get his effect off the draw card, because when he searches a spell or trap, if there are 3 or more defense monsters on the field, he then draws a card as well, which is still really handy to know. Like, the extra card could be helpful. And then I run double Droplet and double Talents. So these are kind of like my board breakers, or just like power cards. Droplets has been amazing, saved me loads. The only time it's really useless is if I get like de-shifted. But at that point, it's just like a lot of my deck kind of crumbles, and I'm like, ugh, I can play through it, but it does lead me in a really tough situation. And tactics is just amazing. A lot of the times with tactics, I end up just looking at my opponent's hand. With this type of deck, you really want to know what the grind game's going to be like, because it's either you make a massive great board, they haven't interrupted you, and they just lose the game, or you OTK them because you can play through their stuff, or it's like they interrupt you and you start hitting like a sort of grind game sort of mentality, and that's where tactics really takes off, because you can look at your opponent's hand and be like, well, I know exactly what they have. I know exactly what to hit to stop them from playing, or to make it so I can outdo them the next turn, and I will have the advantage. I think a lot of times with this deck, it's trying to keep card advantage over your opponent, and it's really good at doing that. But yeah, I enjoyed using 2 of each of them. And then I ran double Abscission. It's nice as a 2 of. You don't need 3 of it. In the past, it was like a 3 of in my head in the older Mannadium builds. But I think now it's like a 2 of. It's a nice card. It's good. Don't get me wrong. But it's bricky. I find a lot of times I get it and I'm like, I don't actually need it that much in my hand. Or it ends up just being a search target to get it to my hand, and I'm like, sick. It doesn't come off that often. So, but 2 is a nice amount for it. It is still a good card. 2 Arrival. Again, you need 2 of this. It's the Scarecrow package. It really helps grinding out a bit to have that second one. 1 Cool by the Grave, because hand traps, we don't like them. Especially draw. Draw hurts me. Terraforming, the fill spells are all really good. 1 Imaginings, this is really good. You need it. It's 100% a 1 of. It does help unbrick your hand sometimes. You don't want more than 1 though. It is just a 1 of, a situational effect that comes up. And its effect in Grave doesn't really come up, but it can make one of your monsters a tuner, basically. Like, it doesn't come up often, but sometimes you might be like, oh, I've got a Reich and a Room Heart. I'm going to make my Room Heart a tuner. And then I run 1 Rumble. So a lot of people don't run this. Some people do. It's just a search target with Crimson Dragon. I'd suggest if you don't think it's like good or if you find it bricky, because sometimes you draw it and it's not that useful. Sometimes it can help you. Replacing it with another Samsara would probably be the better alternative, or another droplet or tactics. I just opted to use one of it. I've enjoyed it so far. I think it's pretty decent. It's just situational, and drawing it in your hand, it's still kind of like a brick. And sometimes you don't want to be adding more bricks into your deck. So it's been nice. Sometimes I'll just bottom deck it with Imaginings though, because it draws two and bottom decks one. So it's not too bad in that context. But I've enjoyed it as a one of, but I might try like taking it out and using a Samsara instead. And then one rotor, because the Warriors are all really good. And then onto traps, I run triple Imperm, because Imperm's a really good hand trap. And good if you go first as well, especially with that column effect. I've enjoyed three of it. A lot of times I sometimes run like 2-2 and then like three of a hand trap. But I do that mostly if I think it's like effect failures and I'm drawing in my opponent's turn, which does not happen in this deck. So I just prefer to have like 6 powerhouse hand traps, which could be like Drolls instead. You could do like Droll Ash or, Droll Imperm. But I side deck the Drolls because I'm like, well, some decks you go against that just don't care about Droll. Whereas most decks, Imperm and Ash will work against nearly anything. So I prefer them in the main. And then one reframing. This card is just crazy. It's just, searchable Omni Negate counter trap card because combo decks lose to good spells like Droplet and Dark Ruler. So onto X deck. One Crimson Dragon. You need him. He's good. Get your Disparter out. Just really good card. Talking of Disparter, one Disparter. Disparter is really strong. Like, can make you do a double Omega loop. Honestly, he's just don't know why he's got 35 as his stats. He is a massive monster. Yeah, just overall fantastic card. One Chaos Angel. This card just wins me games so many times. Like, I'll have a Starfrost on field and a Reichardt, and I'll just synchro into it. And because I use the light in the dark, it gets both its effects, which is by synchros can't be destroyed with battle, and they're unaffected by monster effects. And then it's on some effect banishes a card in the field. So it's just, honestly, it's such a crazy card. It's so strong, and it wins me a lot of games. I think a lot of times because some people don't run it in Mannadium, and I think there isn't really a reason not to. It's always pretty much accessible. The fact that you don't even really need tuners as well, summon it is just ridiculous in my head. But yeah, it's helped me out a lot. Then one Chenying. This has been a really good card. This card has been fantastic. Sometimes I'll end my board. If I can make like a really big board, it'll be like Disbarter, Baron, Cross Sheep, reframing face down. And then if I can get another sinker out, and I've already used Disbarter's effect, it's usually going to be Chenying. Because I can just sit on them like Chaos Angel's cool and all, but if you're going first, it's not something you want to end on your board. Like, your Synchros being straight of battle isn't a threat in your eyes. And if you get Chenying out, that'll pretty much cancel out that sort of fear anyway. And then being unaffected by monster effects isn't an issue. Your main fear is spell cards. Like, strong spell cards. If they're unaffected, the biggest monsters are going to hurt you. Is Sphere Mode and Lava Golems and stuff like that. Which Chaos Angel won't help against anyway. But Chenying, he's been fantastic. Honestly, a lot of times I end my board with him, with like Disparter and Baron. I just win. Because the Baron negate goes, the Disparter's effect goes off. But then the Chenying's like interruption in their turn ends up winning me. Or they just struggle to out my board because all my monsters have gained attack and all their monsters are losing attack. So yeah, really, really handy card. And then one Baron. It's Baron. Negates card. Pretty cool. And then for my 8s, I run one Omega because I can do it twice if I Get Omega out and Disparter. I can Omega take one from hand, Disparter summon the Omega back, and then take another one from their hand. I really value taking cards from my opponent's hand highly. So I really enjoy using Omega. One Amatara, kind of unbricks your hand. It's very much needed. Counters V's on field. Really good card for the deck. One Axel. This is kind of situational. It's not like a crazy card for your deck, but I do summon it quite often. It's more or less like depends if you got like one of those weird hands, or you've been hand trapped and you're trying to play through or make sure you don't get nibbed or something like that. I still think it's needed. It is just really nice to have. So yeah, I definitely would run one of that all the time, and then one Trisk. It's like an unbreaker, honestly. It just extends a little bit. If your hand's not looking too great, or you can only get a level 6 synchro out, this can sometimes help because this can be like your 6, get your level 2 tuner out. If you have like a rival in your hand, you can use Scarecrow Rival, summon your right card, get into a Baron with this and Reich. And then, or you can modify tuners to make them 2, but it doesn't really come up that often. You don't really use that effect. It locks you as well. That's also the bad thing of that, and Synchro Rumbles are locked into synchros for the rest of the turn, which means you can't go into this boy. I'm not gonna lie, in my opinion, this is actually like the best card in the deck. Like, it does everything you want it to. You don't use as a 3 of, like, I'll be honest, I could probably go in 3 of these like every game I go in, but X deck space is pretty tight at the moment. 2 ends up being enough for me to kill. It's so good. It's just such a good card. The fact that Contact fuses, pops a monster on summon, and gains attack. It's not like a hard one to turn. You can just keep summoning Astralauds and popping monsters. It just removes your opponent's field if you're going second. And it becomes really big as well. Like, it is fantastic card. It's level 8. It's a perfect level as well. This is really good card. I only use 2. You don't need 3. And then onto links, I use one Appaloosa. This should be an SP. I'm not gonna lie, this should be an SP Little Knight. I don't have one though. But Appaloosa is what I use for now. And then Cross Sheep, really important for your combos. And then Double Lightheart is it's a soft once per turn. You can use 2 of them to search planets. The other effect is a once per duel effect when it summons itself back from grave. But yeah, so that was Mannadium. It's a really cool deck. It's fun. It's a bit expensive though. I don't even have an SP Little Knight. It's even more expensive if you get that as well. You can play it without like Chaos Angel SP, as long as you have like the other ones that are kind of key for. But it is an expensive deck. But yeah, that's what I use for Mannadium. See you. Bye.